Did Silver Era bodybuilders take steroids? Well, this conversation is still being hotly debated, especially with the new evidence I have presented recently on YouTube. I recently had the pleasure of once again interviewing the First Lady of Fitness, Elaine Lala Lalanne, wife of the late and great Jack Lalanne, and in this interview I asked Elaine about the possible use of anabolic steroids in the Silver Era. I wanted to particularly ask Elaine because her memory is so sharp and she was part of the bodybuilding community at the time. Let's listen to what she has to say, as I am sure that her memories will further add to the conversation. So after speaking now about nutrition, and thank you for showing me all those wonderful bottles and stuff, there's another topic that a lot of people nowadays, I guess, they're trying to find out more about, and that is the beginning of steroid use and things like testosterone and its derivatives. There's some people that believe that a lot of bodybuilders in the 40s and 50s were injecting themselves or taking this stuff.
It was called Dynabol.
Well, that came later, correct?
Yeah.
So my question there is, I'm pretty sure that that Jack, having lived such a long life, had never touched that kind of stuff.
He said, you know what he said? If you take any drugs, anything, and this is him, it's like you going to bed with a rattlesnake. It's gotta get you.
Very true.
He would, all his lectures, he would, say, and anybody ask him any questions, and you'll read in bodybuilding magazines what he says about drugs. Like, I don't know if you have those books that I have on that talk about how Jack felt about drugs, and any kind of drugs in those bodybuilding magazines. I don't know. I have magazines that date back to 1934.
Wow.
1936 of Jack, and every year there's something about Jack until he died. I don't know if they're all bodybuilding, but they're all magazines. But I have a lot of bodybuilding magazines with Jack in them.
Yeah. Well, I've seen Jack's body in 34 and 36. That was well before a lot of these things existed. And I guess then, so you're confirming that Jack never took even testosterone.
I am confirming, definitely, because if you knew Jack, he was adamant going to bed with a rattlesnake.
Very good. On that note, what's your then opinion about the accusations made about bodybuilders from the 50s and from the 40s, like Steve Reeves, Reg Park, etc., that people accuse them as well of having taken these substances?
Steve Reeves, I don't think took anything. Steve Reeves started with Jack.
Yeah, well, they were both from Oakland.
Yes, they're both from Oakland. They all went to. Jack was the one that opened the first studio, so they eventually Clint Eastwood. They all went there, and then they branched off to this one, because Jack then started going into more, the businessmen and so the kids that started with him, they wanted to have their own gyms. So they opened them, and that was fine with Jack. He didn't, all I care about is I want to help people to help themselves, period. That's all.
Yeah.
If you want to know what Jack's philosophy was, I want to help people to help themselves.
Yeah.
And so he a lot of his friends went off and made their own way to their own gyms.
But back to that question, you were saying that you don't think Steve Reeves ever took those kinds of substances?
Jack never mentioned anything like that. He said Steve Reeves is probably has the best body of any bodybuilder. He said he's perfect. He has and not it had nothing to do with Jack, you know. I mean, Jack had a pretty good body. I mean, oh golly, I think when I see some of these bodybuilders, and then and I see this in
Yes.
our book, Pride and Discipline, I wrote with Greg Justice's, and forward is by Lou Ferrigno.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but he always complimented, and even to just me, just talking to me, you know, and he says Steve Reeves has the best body. He said. I mean, I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm glad to hear this from a person that lived through that era, and that's really important. I think a lot of people need to hear this. So thank you for speaking about this topic, which is
I don't mind, because I can only tell you what I know that Jack has told me, and
yeah.
I know Steve. I met Steve Reeves, and I met all, you know, a lot of these guys, and it's I just never heard that Steve Reeves took anything.
Fantastic. One thing I forgot to ask earlier regarding anabolics is, in your opinion and in Jack's, when did anabolics actually enter bodybuilding? I mean, you've lived through this time.
I don't know, but he said, he told me, I can remember him telling me that when we were talking, so they had asked him a question about what, you know, about drugs or whatever they're taking now, you know, and then he went back into the days, the early days, like I think in the 30 late, I think in the 30s and 40s. I think it goes that Dynabol stuff. I remember Dynabol because that's kind of a name, but that's what he called it. He said that they were taking some of them were not too many of them, but
Dianabol was first created in, believe it or not, in 1958.
Oh, was it? Well, I don't know. Then when I don't know what it was called then. All I know is I remember the word Dynabol because I don't know what was it called in earlier days. And
well, before that, there was just testosterone. So that was in
I
the.
don't know. I never heard of that. I just heard that, you know, that some people were taking it early. Don't ask. I mean, I'm not a aficionado, whatever.
Aficionado.
Right on
So,
that.
so in Jack's opinion, some people were already doing anabolics in the 40s.
Yeah,
Oh
I
boy.
think so.
Can you repeat that?
Huh?
You said yes, and then what?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, that's what I mean. See, I can't tell you exactly. I just know that in the early days, that's what that he had. You know, this happened when he was questioned about today's. You know, and then and he said, "What did they do it? You know, years ago?" And then I can remember him saying yes. And I remember them using the word Dynabol.
Well,
That's
as I
all.
said, Dianabol came out a little later in the 50s. But if he's saying that, or if he was saying that uh, bodybuilders were using something in the 1940s, then that would be the
I'm
early.
not sure. You know, I mean, you know, I can't, I can't truthfully, I can't tell you truthfully whether it's 40s or 50s. I
Okay.
mean, he just said early, you know,
Yeah.
early bodybuilders. So you know, it's been a long time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know that Dianabol really changed the game,
Yeah.
definitely. And that was in the 50s. But I guess my question in it is always going to be, because I know that in the 50s, it is also well known that in the 50s, that's when things started to change with anabolics. I guess the question
Yeah.
that many people have is if there was something going on in the 40s.
Yeah, it seemed to me there was, but I mean, I can remember this is so many years ago that I can't tell you truthfully.
Yeah,
I
that's okay.
don't ask me that one because I'm
We'll move
I'm
on.
I'm not up to speed on that.
Yeah, we'll move on. But it's interesting, though, to have had this conversation. My first impression is that you can see how she and Jack were completely against steroids and drug use. In fact, Elaine quotes Jack, who would state, quote, "If you take any drugs, it's like going to bed with a rattlesnake. It's going to get you." End quote. Elaine adamantly confirms that Jack Lalanne did not take steroids. He was completely and adamantly against the use of anabolic steroids. Photographic evidence shows that Jack was already heavily muscled prior to the advent of testosterone in the mid-1930s, so I definitely believe Elaine and Jack on that matter. Jack kept his natural hard-earned muscle throughout his life and never looked enhanced. The man instead was a superman of both muscular strength and endurance, as he would continually showcase throughout his career with his many feats of strength and endurance, which Elaine and I will talk about in a later episode. Elaine also gives her own opinion on the accusations made about Steve Reeves. In her opinion, Steve did not take anabolic steroids and was simply genetically gifted in both structure and beauty. As Elaine remembers, Jack said that Steve Reeves was the perfect bodybuilder with the best body. Finally, and most surprising to me of all, was her answer to when anabolic steroids came into the iron game. Elaine mentions that Dianabol really changed the game. According to Jack Lalanne, though, steroids came into the game as early as the late 1930s or 1940s. Further, she remembers that Jack had said that some early bodybuilders were using steroids during this time. However, towards the end of this part of the interview, Elaine stated that she wasn't sure if it was in the 40s or the 50s when anabolics came in and couldn't truthfully answer. Unfortunately, as you could tell, Elaine's memory failed her in this particular topic, as she and Jack were simply not into the drug scene, so I couldn't find out anything further. This conversation really does make one think, though, about the natural status of Silver Era bodybuilders. I recently uncovered John Grimmick's testosterone letter, the ads of testicular extracts in muscle mags during the mid-30s and mid-40s, and now a first-hand interview with Elaine Lalanne, who remembers Jack stating that early bodybuilders were using anabolic steroids. Some, but not all. Although admittedly, her memory regarding this topic is failing her, and she doesn't even remember if it was during this time or during the 1950s, which I find much more likely. It does appear more and more, though, that with all this newfound evidence that at least experimentation was going on during the 1940s, or even earlier. So I do hope you have enjoyed this interview with Lala Lalanne. If you have, please give the video a like, subscribe, and leave me your comments. In the next video, Lala and I talk about the Jack Lalanne show. You won't want to miss out on this one. That's it from me. This is the Golden Era Bookworm saying bye for now. Head to www.goldenerabookworm.com for the biggest range of classic old school bodybuilding books as ebooks, e-magazines such as Iron Man and Reg Park Journal, high quality bodybuilding posters of the Golden Era stars, merchandise and classic gymwear featuring Steve Reeves, Marvin Eder, John Grimmick, Reg Park, and many other Golden Era stars. For those wishing to build a classic physique, lose fat and build muscle, online training is also available. Collectibles such as rare autographed photos from the Golden Era stars are also available, and to collaborate, please get in touch. As a natural bodybuilder, it is imperative to know your own testosterone levels, as they are a reflection of the anabolic environment created by your diet and training. I would highly recommend using the male hormone test kit from Let's Get Checked, and make sure you use my code GOLDEN30 for a 30% discount. Again, the advantage of checking yourself regularly is that you will know how well your body is anabolically primed to put on the much desired muscle you are working for. Not all of us have the time to go to a gym or the opportunity to have a coach to teach us one-on-one, but with the Future Fitness app, it's like having a personal trainer in your living room. From February 11th onwards, you can try the Future Fitness app for only $19 for the first month. Think of what you can accomplish during that first month. So go on and hit my link at tryfuture.co/GEB to get started.